Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and let's welcome our guest, a candidate, Carlos Thomas, to Talk Time with Terri. Carlos, please say hi to everyone in Cyberland, and thank you for joining us.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm just happy to be here. I appreciate the invite and look forward to getting to know y'all. Or y'all getting
Absolutely.
to know me rather.
Yes, and thank you for coming. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, if you have any questions for candidate Carlos Thomas running for school board, in what district, Carlos? Carlos,
District 1.
District One. Um, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and our team will make sure that Carlos gets all the questions. And if he does not have time to answer them, we will make sure that he gets your questions and he will answer them at a timely manner. So please, if you have any questions before we get started, or make sure to put them in the chat. I mean, put your questions in the chat, and our team will make sure to get them to us. Thank you. So before we get started, first and foremost, tell us about you. Tell us who you are, and exactly tell us a little bit of why did you decide to step out and run for school board?
Well, I'm Carlos Thomas. Most people, or a lot of people, call me Chef Los. Um, I'm a father. I'm a advocate. I'm a educator. I'm a chef. I'm a lot of things. But I chose to run for school board. This is actually my second time running for the seat.
Mm,
Um, 2 cycles ago, I ran for county council. Um, and the cycle, 2 cycles before that, I ran for school board. And simply just because I care
mm.
about our students and how they're being prepared to approach this world that we live in. It really concerns me. For the most part, the outcomes and how our students are perceiving life, and I don't think that we are doing the greatest job. We have made some strides since the last time I ran, but I think that we can do better. We can always do better, and I think that why not give give myself another chance.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And not now you did teach me something because I knew you ran one other time. I didn't know you ran two other times. So thank you for sharing that with us. So, and you had stated, that one of your reasons is your passion and how you care for our students. So, tell us what would be two of your top priorities if elected to school board.
Transparency. I don't think that there has been enough transparency and relates to community and the students that we serve. I think that in addition to that, students first. Um, those are like first and second. And they kind of coincide because I don't know that all the decisions that are being made are putting students first.
Mm,
There are a lot of inconsistencies with how the school board has been governed.
mhm,
There's a lot of inconsistencies around, like I said, transparency, how our students and their parents are getting the information because it's a twofold thing. We can't just give the students the information, the parents the information. The students are living in this world.
mm,
I specifically remember, when I, at this point, a long time ago, I guess, when I was in school and they changed the credits from 22 to 25. And that was something that the students knew nothing about until we started school the next day or the next year. So I think that it's important to have that communication wide open between the board and the people it serves.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. And that I'm sure the city has to agree that transparency, is key to whatever relationship. That's the one of the main ingredients to foster a relationship is transparency. So thank you so much for that. Um, so as you know, 22 between 22-25% of Pittsburgh PPS budget is spent on charter school tuition, and so that's about 145 million dollars that is taken away from public schools. And so, how would you work towards ending the privatization of public education, or
I
or
mean,
or is that something that you is even on your or on your in your radar, on your radar rather.
It is, and it's something that I challenge with myself because I have a student. I have a daughter who went to both private and public at some point in time,
Hmm.
or and is currently in private school now. And I challenged myself because I did want her to be a public school student,
Hmm.
but how do we make public schools better? Um, all of my younger children are in public schools at the moment,
Hmm.
and I think it starts with taking a risk of putting, our great students in that. But I also think that if we as parents are going to take that risk, then we have to do something to make our schools better. Something that raises our schools above charter schools, and not saying that they're that great, because the other side of this is saying no.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of proposition around charter schools and charter school expansion. And I think that if we keep saying yes to those resources,
Hmm.
then we're never going to get our money back and invested in our schools. So
Right.
I think that we have to invest in ourselves first and really take a look at what that means. Um, and then also advocate to our state because this is a statewide issue.
Hmm.
This is a statewide problem. Keep advocating that this has to change. I understand school choice. I completely do. As a parent
Hmm.
of 5 children, I understand. But we cannot keep sacrificing the public resources that we're supposed to invest in ourselves. And I think
Hmm.
that stands paramount to anything.
Wow. Thank you for that. Yeah, and so, and I wouldn't say that's challenging, but I'm glad that you shared that with us because you have the vision of both sides
Hmm.
of and from standing on a parent standpoint. So thank you for sharing that with us, Carlos.
And I'll add to note, one of the biggest things that has kept at least my oldest in this in charter and in private school is the
Hmm.
communication. So I think that if we fix that, amongst the
Hmm.
district, at least I would be willing to give them a chance because it goes back to my problem issue. Major solution as a parent has always been how the district communicates to people,
Hmm.
not just about the bad things, but about the good things too. There's a lot of greatness that is coming and has come out of our district, and we don't do a good job of doing that. Our district, our school district, is virtually unattractive.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
we were dating, I would have dumped our school district a long time ago.
Well, that's one way to put it. Thank you for that. Um, my next question is, how would you? Um, no, I'm gonna ask you this one. Would you divest resources from over criminalizing our students and invest into supports of resources, um, and or more mediation, more less 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 magistrate and more solutions? What is your stance and what's your vision around that?
Abolish criminalization of kids.
Mm,
I was just having a conversation around how mental health plays a huge role in that. I think that at this point, and we have to start looking at holistic approaches,
mm-hmm,
whole family approaches. Um, I say that to say because I've had my own challenges with understanding what is going on with my own children.
mm-hmm,
So I've had to, seek help and reinforcements to so that I can be a better parent to whatever my child was going through at that time. So I think that if back to communication, right? There are a lot of resources, but are we being communicated those resources? I mean, the
mm,
county has a lot of resources. The city is developing resources. Does the school board have a list of those resources? Do we have our own resources? We're seeing a divestment in, you know, special. I don't want to say special ed, but students with exceptionalities. We're seeing a divestment in those teachers when we should be seeing an increase in those teachers.
mm,
More mental health professionals because we know. Listen, if I got to go to therapy to live in this whatever's going on, then I know the kids do. because there's a thin line of understanding that is there when you wake up and hear about what's going on or what your parents have to go through. And
Yeah.
I would say that in my 30s, I'm only just now beginning to start to understand what
Mm.
my parents went through. And I think that speaks a lot to, like I said, my how we interpret how we end up at the end of all of this. And I don't remember being able to have those conversations. And now I see students starting to be able to have those conversations, but we have to increase those efforts. We have to maintain the progress that we know, especially after the pandemic, the progress that we know we need to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that, Carlos. Thank you so much. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have candidate Carlos Thomas running for school board in District One. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat or put them in the box, the text box, and the team will make sure that we get the questions to Mr. Thomas. And if he cannot answer them, if we don't have enough time for Mr. Thomas to answer them, we will make sure that he gets all of your questions. So please, if you have any questions, please put them in the text box. Um, so as you was talking about the resources, so what came to mind when you was talking about, like, does the community know, does the families know about what resources are coming out of the school? So we have what, 8, 9 community schools, right? So
Mm.
um, what is your vision for strengthening and growing our community schools?
I think it's putting the resources directly in the schools. Fortunately, I have the pleasure of working with Westinghouse um, through my job, and I get to see what Homewood Children's Village does for the students at not just at Westinghouse, but at Phase on Lincoln and the schools that they're serving. But I would personally like to remove the nonprofit. I think that adds an extra layer of, you know, accountability
Mm-hmm.
into the matter, where we could just put the resources directly in the schools. I think that implies directly with what we want our district to look like. This district utilization plan has been like a hot topic, and then it kind of got silenced for a little bit. Um, and I think that as we continue to look at what our district physically looks like, we have to look at what we want it to look like, and that is also including the resources that we know we need. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, really just eliminating the nonprofits, because there's little to. I mean, we might as well keep privatizing schools if we do that.
Mm.
Um, I think developing a real plan for what a community school actually looks like, and being able to provide those services and resources that go above and beyond what not just students needs, but what the family needs. Like I said, it's not one thing I know as a parent is that it's a village. It takes a village to raise a child. Um, and I think if that village was stronger for or met the strength that the parents needed, we can make some more progress.
So I want to make sure that I understand. Are you saying that the nonprofits in the schools are controlling the resources that's in the schools?
Not necessarily. So I'll say that Homewood Children's Village support does the supporting work of what community schools would look like within the schools it serves. It's not the school directly doing it. So if Homewood Children's Village has a funding issue, like we saw when transportation was eliminated for Homewood students traveling to and from school, then we don't get things like buses, which caused a big issue, uh, conflict during the school year, and understanding that most of the students in Weston that go to Homewood schools or go to any school near Homewood live in the proximity to walk. The issue then becomes: is it safe for them to walk? Think the district, back to non-communication, removed the safe routes to school, which a lot of parents were looking for, so that they can implement transportation back. Um, to this day, we still haven't seen that transportation return, and back to we're relying on nonprofits to implement these changes and these accommodations, when it's really our school board and our city officials that need to work together, to make the streets safer.
Hmm.
so that our students can walk. And maybe we need to change the the mileage for what it looks like for a student to walk, considering what that parental support looks like. I think that's something that has been long outdated,
Hmm.
considering that we have a lot of single parent homes, and we don't support that.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for breaking that down, Carlos, for me, and I'm sure several others. And I just wanted to tap in a little bit on the resources that you were talking about in our community schools to our audience. And if you do not know that if your community has a community school, the community schools are Langley, King, Arlington, Arsenal, pre-K, and Arsenal. Pre-K to 5 and 6 to 8. Faison, Westinghouse, Lincoln, and U Prep. So please, those are the community schools that invest back into the community. And Carlos was saying, Mr. Thomas is saying that, the burden should not be on the nonprofits in the community. Thank you so much for that. My next question is, so PBS currently has a ban on suspensions from pre-K to 2 to second grade for nonviolent offenses. What is your stance on increasing that suspension ban from pre-K to 5, the fifth grade, for nonviolent offenses?
I think we absolutely need it, and not that I want to criminalize anybody else, but I think we need to assess, why you would want to criminalize
Mhm,
a fifth grader.
mhm,
I think there's a lot of social determinants that kind of come to fruition as to why a fifth grader would even get criminalized. That probably need to be assessed or
mhm,
could be assessed first before we even get to that point. Um, Back to the testing that we introduced for early childhood, there's a lot of things that that we call ourselves preparing for that we don't necessarily handle. I think that we have policies in place for a reason. I
mhm,
think it's about following those policies, following not only following them but improving them. um, my experience with, for example, you know with Phazon hasn't been that bad because the staff has been amazing,
mhm,
and the support has been amazing. And I think that that plays a better role into what it looks like. But unless, to your point, if we don't put it on paper, it can happen,
mhm.
and we definitely need to increase that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. We learning today on our educational community civic series, Talk Time with Terri. um, Mr. Thomas, how would you prioritize underserved children? The children with disabilities, the LGBTQ plus community, ESL community, our Black and Brown community. How would you? What is your vision? Um,
Well, I think it takes, to look at, you call them underserved communities, and I think that they're only underserved because we underserve them.
mhm,
And I think it's just about servicing them. They're we have to look at the picture from all communities.
mhm,
Um, and I think that maybe it's looking at back to how we service them. Are we even serving them at all? Because we can't call them underserved if we're serving them. And I think eliminating that phrase in our own work is imperative. Um, Back to, I work with students with exceptionalities a lot. I really don't understand why the OCA model is in place.
mhm,
Still, it it actually it does more harm than none,
mm,
especially without having a building and students not being able to commingle with whatever building that they're in. Like, that
mhm,
doesn't make the outcome any better. That's not a student focused outcome. That's a, we want to remediate the problems that we have staff outcome. And I do, I do have some commitment to teachers, but if we're collectively talking about student first outcomes, then I would only want those people at the table.
wow. Wow, thank you for that. Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. So, last year we went through the school closure plan. There was a consultant that was hired, that came and suggested closing 16 of our schools. Um, what is your stance? What is your vision? What is your thoughts on school closures?
I never really understood why we had. I mean, I understand the population of Pittsburgh and the situation beforehand, but I never understood why we never moved to rectify that sooner. And I think we're just dealing with a whole bunch of mess at this point. Um, I think with that though, I think that we have to go back and listen to the needs of our community.
Mm,
Um, because that's not back to transparency. We just haven't been transparent with this process. Or I'll say they, because I'm not elected yet, but they have not been transparent with this process. They have not looked at historical data in this process in regards to why certain schools were open and or stayed open. It just kind of became, let's look at the map and the uses for the buildings. And I don't think that that even makes sense because I coach wrestling. I love wrestling. I'm a referee in wrestling. I do everything wrestling. And what doesn't make sense is how in wrestling in middle school you compete in the spring, which takes you out of the wrestling season, which is in the winter,
hmm
um, which eliminates how a wrestler could progress, not just athletically but academically. We know that I mean, it's been proven, right? Our city has had a decrease in violence largely because of, I wouldn't say, well, I'll say largely because of community sports, things like football and basketball that give our students something to do. I
hmm
think that incubating some of these practices into our school system that allow our students to maintain, like I said, not just the athletic uh, progress, but the academic progress, because there's something about walking into a building and knowing that you're going to be educated,
mm,
not just be educated by the teachers, but by your coaches, by the
hmm
janitor, by whoever is in that building with you. You know that you're going to receive some type of education.
hmm
And I think that we have to look at the resources and what it looks like to create that. And be back to just be transparent with our parents about what we want to do. I think
hmm
that's the issue is that there is no real vision for what we want to do. We're just closing schools.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, who does that serve beyond the people who secretly know why we made the decision in the first place? I think that's
Wow.
the biggest issue.
So transparency. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard it, and every answer that Mr. Thomas have gave is transparency is his whole campaign. So one of my last questions is, how involved do you believe the school board should be overseeing the superintendent, or do you think the school board should not be overseeing the superintendent?
Uh, you know, I sit on several boards of organizations and I have very close relationships with the EDs. Um, None of them, those close relationships conflict with the job that they're doing or the job that I have to do. I think that, when people say that they meet me, they say you either love Carlos or you hate him. And that's what I hope for my relationship with the superintendent to be. You're either going to love or you're going to hate me because I'm going to do the job that the people elected me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's not. I mean, rightfully so. We have this board of directors in place for a reason, and respectfully, I would be his boss. So I think that to whatever the my boss, which is the people, want me to do is what I'm going to do.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And so first and foremost, I want to thank you again for gracing us on our educational community civic series. Um, there is a question. Someone has a question, and the question is, before I give you my very final question, the question
Mhm.
from the audience is: being a school board member requires a lot of time. There are a lot of moving parts. How will you keep up with all the meetings and policies that happen every month?
It's a good question. Time management is key. If it ain't in my calendar, I'm not going to do it. You should see my calendar on a daily basis. But honestly, it means that I have to put some things down, and that's
Mhm.
just being transparent. If I am coming into this saying students first, then that's what I mean. My work for the past 2 years has been all around students and student outcomes, and it has really given me an idea of what is needed for students. Being a part of the workforce development space and being able to identify students who like who want to succeed has been like a big part of my job. And almost every student that I've met, with the exception of maybe like one and a half, and I say a half because he don't know yet, wants to succeed.
Mhm.
And I think that if somebody is going to make time for it, like I said, I'm a parent, and at this point, this ain't just about, you know, my kids. If I've always taken the idea of like, it takes a village. So any kids that come into my space are taken care of, and I think that that's the same way I would treat school board, and pertains to the importance of making this a commitment. It doesn't just making decisions that, like I said, that the community puts forward, and being in places where the community wants me to be.
Thank you. Thank you. And our next community question: how will you engage the community in District 1?
How will I engage them?
Mhm.
I would want to put I I mean realistically, and I'm an organizer at heart. And I think the first thing that I would need to do was to put together some type of group of parents that can help me do that job. I understand that school board is completely unpaid and it takes a lot of volunteer hours, but I think if we're going to talk about engagement, then we need like a focus group of some sort. And I know
Mm.
that there are groups that exist that participate, but I think it's about, you know, getting the core of that, right? And talking about how we can push the agenda forward. Back to, I'm only being elected, only being the mouthpiece at the table, but I plan to bring everybody with me.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, I do want to ask you, how can people get in touch with you just in case if I didn't, or we didn't talk about everything that someone may have wanted to hear. We also have one last community question. But before we get to that, if someone wants to talk to you and maybe have some more questions, maybe want to volunteer, um, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can email me, Carlos at votecarlosthomas.com. You can go to my website, votecarlosthomas.com, or you can call me, 412-670-6337. Social media, votecarlosthomas.com, or I'm sorry, vote Carlos Thomas. Um, and yeah, those are or you can just see me in the street because I'm always in the street somewhere doing something.
So, and there you have it. In our last public community question, do you think that public hearings should have a virtual option? Because not every parent or caregiver can get to the administrative building to share public comments.
Absolutely. And I this is a big, thing, but outside of probably the scope of school board, but I think that needs to be changed in Sunshine Act too. Like, we're in a digital age of, the FCC is communicating with us through our cell phones now. So
Mm,
I think that, we almost have to make those accommodations. And, COVID only showed us how much more we needed that. But I
mhm.
think that, back to accessibility and transparency, we can't be transparent if everybody doesn't have access.
Right. Wow. Well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Carlos Thomas, candidate for School Board District 1. Thank you again for coming. And we have no more questions from the community. He did give you his contact information. Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for gracing us at Educational Community Civic Series Talk Time with Terri. Good night,
Of course.
everyone.